Hello everyone, my name's Linda Eads and I'm the Head of Caring, Health and Wellbeing Services here at the charity, which means I have the pleasure of developing the services we bring to support the civil service community. And I also work closely with our wellbeing team who are a vital part of that support. Outside of work, I'm a wife, a mom, a nanny, but I'm also a carer and have been for many years now. So therefore, I'm delighted to introduce this session about changing relationships when caring, as I think it's such an important aspect of caring that needs to be talked about. So today you're going to be joined by Tamara Hoyton, who is a senior practice consultant with Relate at Family Action, Lisa Colville, who is our Caring, Health and Wellbeing Partnerships Manager, and also Lisa works in our wellbeing team. We have Mohinder Singh Bell from the Cross Government Carers Network, Claire Louise Hendry from the HMRC Carers Network, and Darren Fernley from the MOJ Carers Network. I hope you enjoy watching and thank you for being part of this year's conference with us.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and I'm delighted to welcome you to this conference session on caring and relationships. We're joined today by a lovely panel of experienced carers. We have Darren, Claire Louise and Mohinder with us today. And we've also got Tamara, who's a relationship counsellor from Relate, joining us. We're going to be chatting today about how the caring role can impact on our relationships, perhaps with the people that we care for, perhaps with our friends, our family, our work colleagues, and actually even sometimes in how we view ourselves, the relationship that we have even with ourselves. So firstly, what we're going to do is invite our panel to introduce themselves. So a little bit about themselves, what their caring role is, just so that we can get to know them a little bit better. So Claire Louise, could we start with you? Would you tell us a little bit about your role, maybe even where you're working and what your caring role is?
Yeah, I'm no longer a carer, unfortunately. The person I cared for passed away in January. I was a carer for 9 years. I cared for my husband, who had a brain tumour. So he also had an acquired brain injury from the treatment that he'd had, which obviously deteriorated over time and therefore changed our relationship over time. I also have 2 children. They are now 17 and 13. Yeah, but less said about them the better, really, at that age. My parents live next door as well in a granny flat, so I suppose in some ways I'm a little bit of a sandwich carer, but I don't do as much for those at the moment. I work for HMRC. I've worked for the civil service for 35 years this year. So I worked for the civil service the whole time I was a carer. And I was supported at work while I was a carer via a carer's passport.
That's super. And that's great to actually just highlight that right at the start, because we do want to mention some of the things that have been supportive to you in the workplace, as well as talking about particularly how relationships have been affected. So thank you so much for that, Claire Louise. Mohinder, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background and your experience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Lisa. My name's Mohinder and I work as a contracts manager within Finance Group for the Department for Work and Pensions. I'm a caregiver. My wife was initially diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We were told to prepare for end-of-life conversations. She underwent emergency surgery. During that surgery, 3 centimeters of her brain was removed, and we believed that was the only kind of option to save her life. However, later transpired that it wasn't cancer. It was a severe infection, and we were left grappling with the consequences of invasive procedure. That was we were told later that could have been had done through keyhole surgery. So yeah, it's difficult, the realization. Yeah. It's difficult to process, something we all struggle with, and we kind of struggle to talk about it now, but I thought it was important to kind of explain how I've become a carer.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mohinder. And I know that these can be, and one of the things we want to just reflect is that these can be emotional things to talk about. Carers may not always talk about how they feel about their role as caring, with that caring responsibility. So obviously within our panel today, we want to make sure that everybody's looking after themselves and their well-being, and just take a moment if we need to during this chat. But also for those of us in the audience, if you're watching this session, you're just feeling a little bit, oh, I need a moment, take that moment, reach out to somebody close to you, get a little bit of support. And of course, remember, this is a recorded session, so you can come back in at any point if you choose to. Darren, can we ask you to unmute yourself and maybe give us a little introduction to you as well? Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having me here today. So my name's Darren Fernley. I work for the Ministry of Justice, and I work within the Britain Correspondence Team, which sounds fascinating, and it truly is. We do all the inquiries from members of the public, ministers, and just about anywhere and everywhere else about the MJ estate and HR policies. So it's a barrel of laughs, as they say. So my experience I'm going to be sharing with you today is caring for my mum. I'm on my vascular dementia, and because my grandfather had Alzheimer's going back 30 years ago now, and I saw the struggles my mum had caring for him, as her father. But when she was diagnosed with vascular dementia, I was determined, or I thought I was determined, to keep her at home for as long as I could. So, a little bit of a spoilers alert, it wasn't as simple as that, but I'll go into a little bit later. So, again, thank you for having me here today.
Oh, thank you for joining us, Darren, and for being willing to share your experience. I think actually probably that story of dementia will be one that again is resonating with lots of our audience today. Tamara, you are joining us from Relate today. So your perspective on this is coming from that professional side as somebody who works with a lot of carers. Could you tell us a little bit about your role and about yourself maybe?
Yeah, so I work as a senior practice consultant for Relate. We do, as senior practice consultant, we're looking at quality assurance across our services. Some of the services we offer for carers are family counselling, adult relationship counselling, so where you are looking after your partner and the changes that are involved in that changing role. We also offer services for young people who find themselves in a caring capacity. So yeah, lots of different experiences across different demographics of carers as well. From areas of social deprivation to multicultural caring responsibilities, lots of diversity around, the context around which people care.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I think we're going to be able to glean a lot from your experience and your perspective today. I think it's interesting you mentioned there, Tamara, the support that you provide for young people, perhaps young carers. Typically at the charity, our audience are going to be of working age because they are civil servants. But actually for a lot of the people that we're speaking to, perhaps they have a caring role, but children within their household are supporting in that caring role. So that's really interesting to see that there's real value as well for any in our audience today who are in that situation, that there is support there for young carers as well. Perhaps I can just introduce myself as well a little bit. So as I've already said, my name is Lisa. I have worked for the Charity for Civil Servants for over 17 years now, and I'm part of the Caring, Health and Wellbeing team. So I spend a lot of my time speaking to individuals who apply to the charity. They might come to us for help with their well-being, their physical health perhaps, and very often their caring responsibilities. I've also got the pleasure of working across the whole of the UK with many different carers networks within departments, and we'll maybe be able to touch a little bit on the support that's available if you're not already a part of a carers network, that it's worth getting connected to them. I have my own carers passport, so I'm also a carer, and that's been really valuable to me because it just has allowed a little bit of flexibility and support when my parents have needed a little bit of additional assistance. So introductions done, let's get into our subject of caring and relationships. So one of the things that I would really love to know, because we often think about that relationship perhaps initially with the person that we provide the care for, I'd be really interested to know, perhaps Claire Louise, we could start with you on this, when you were providing that care for your husband. Did you find that the relationship that you had with him of being husband and wife, to then adding that caring responsibility, did that start to make some changes quite quickly for you, or did you find that was a more gradual process?
It was a little bit of both. Initially, when Ian was diagnosed and he had 6 brain operations in 6 months, and then he had radiotherapy, obviously left him, with brain damage. So he couldn't therefore work, where he was always the main breadwinner, for example, but also affected his cognitive and his memory for the way his brain worked. So a lot of things that he used to maybe take control over and do, all of a sudden I had to just take the lead on. And then obviously as he deteriorated over time, and got the stage where at the end, you know, about the middle of last year, his legs stopped working, then obviously that was another layer of caring. And then in some ways you don't have a husband and wife relationship anymore in that situation, because you are just really a full-time carer for somebody. But throughout the whole of the process, I did try and still discuss things with Ian. I never kind of left him out of things while he was still capable of making, you know, being involved in discussions. I always made sure that he was involved. Even if he couldn't make a decision, I would kind of say, oh, well, I was thinking about doing this because of that, and what do you think, and do you think that's the right idea? And so he didn't feel like he was no longer important or part of the family in a way, in making decisions and things. So even though it was a change gradually over time, from the moment he became ill, it did change our dynamic and our relationship.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned you've still got sort of teenagers in the house, so they were quite young when your husband was going through this experience. Did that affect the relationship for them with their dad?
Well, my son was 4, 2 months after Ian was originally diagnosed, and my daughter was 7. So my daughter probably more so than my son, because she did do a lot of caring. She was quite close to her dad, so she got a little bit older. She used to step in and say, oh, well, you can go out, Mum, and I'll keep an eye on Dad and things. And she was quite sensible. Overall, it obviously did change their relationship, because they couldn't do things with Dad the way other people did things with Dad. But again, throughout the whole process, because they lived in our house, they're not blind, they've got ears, we always tried to make sure we was open and honest with them with what was going on and what the situation was. So we knew, from early on, Ian would not live to an old age, and we were told quite clearly, you know, that we were probably looking at a 10-year kind of age kind of thing. So from the very beginning, you know, we didn't actually say to the children, oh my God, your dad's going to die in 10 years or anything. But we were really clear to them that, oh, you know, if there's things you want to do with Dad, we probably need to do them, because, you know, he might not be able to do it later on, or he might not be able to do this as his mobility decreases, and made it quite clear to them that, you know, we had to do certain things at certain times. But we never put a time scale on it, because I think it's really important, if you have got children, not to do it, because kids are very black and white. And if I'd said to my children, okay, Dad's got 10 years and that's it, then they're on that countdown. And if, for example, he'd lived more than 10 years, I would have probably got the questions about, oh, he's not dead yet, what's happened? Or if, because they were very, again, we used quite clear language in the house. We didn't say things like, he's going to go to sleep. You know, we tried to be as open and honest with them, because it's a lot for them to cope with as well. But yeah, so, you know, and if we'd kind of said, oh, you know, Dad, he has not dead yet, or if he hadn't lived those 10 years, I didn't want to be them in a situation where, oh, well, you know, you said Dad had 10 years and he only had 6. What happened with that? So again, it does change all the relationships within a household, and in some ways for the better. I would say the children probably spent a lot more quality time with their dad than when he worked, because all of a sudden we knew we had limited time to make memories, take photographs, do things that we wanted to do as a family. And as everybody here, we're all working people, we know what it's like. You know, sometimes after being at work for 5 days a week, you come home and the last thing you want to do is go and spend a weekend doing something with the children or whatever. And I think we made more of an effort to do that. So in some ways, part of the relationship was actually enhanced by being a carer as well.
That's a lovely expression, isn't it? Tamara, what's your thoughts? Because you spoke about doing work with families where there are carers. What's your thought?
I mean, one of the things I just think that Claire Louise has done brilliantly was sort of consulting with, is Ian your husband? Yeah, consulting with him, engaging with him in those decisions. And I suppose one of the qualities, one of the nice things about that is that there's something about retaining that coupledom, retaining that, you know, he's still important in terms of our conversations, and retaining that sense of partnership, that we're still a couple here, and I want to hang on to that aspect of our relationship. So I just think that was lovely, and I think there's real value in that.
I thought that was a lovely Yeah, I thought it was a
doesn't
lovely expression as well to say, let's really make this valuable time as well in the family, I suppose, because we could start to think about the negatives and the impact it has on the relationships in a negative way, but actually it really deepened those relationships in some ways in your family.
And I think just one more thing, if I may, like that your relationship doesn't stop being, you don't stop being a couple. You simply become carer and cared for. But there's something in between here, isn't there? There's a transition period. It's an incremental change. It's not like sort of sudden.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, the person who's been cared for, it's a big change for them. I mean, Ian, you know, he was the main breadwinner. He worked in a high, you know, pressure job. He was highly intelligent. You know, and then overnight, you know, he struggled to remember birthdays and simple things. He was a tax inspector. He couldn't do maths anymore. You know, so it was a big change for him as well. And obviously we had to support him through that because I think he lost part of his identity. So giving him still the part of identity that we could, i.e., you know, the husband and the father, and that was really important because it still made him feel like, oh, I am actually still, you know, contributing to life here in some way.
That's lovely. Yeah. Can I actually draw that question then down to Darren? Because just something that you said, Tamara, where we speak about, you know, the person, we've still got that family relationship or that connection with the person. Now we've got this additional relationship of carer and cared for. That's a very different dynamic than when you're talking about caring for a parent, isn't it, Darren? And maybe particularly there might be some just additional little challenges when it's a son caring for mum. What could you tell us a little bit about how that dynamic changed? Was that challenging and of course that's maybe a slower progression into those changes than Claire Louise experienced?
For me, it's really immensely challenging because I'm going to sound slightly silly when I say this, but certainly for me, you develop the unrealistic belief that your parents are always going to be there. Completely ludicrous, because in reality, the sensible part of my brain says that's not going to happen. But even in my 30s and 40s, you think always going to be there, always going to be the one you turn to when you're in trouble. And the thing with my mum, she was never a big lady, physically big, but she was. I mean, I was tall enough since I was about 14 years old. But she had an immensely strong character. I moved into my kind of teens and early 30s, mid 30s. She could cut me dead with a look, you know, the mum look. I was all know about it. Even though I was like pretty much twice her weight and could pick her up under one arm if I wanted to, she could cut me dead with a look, no question at all. And it was really strange because she looked like my mum still, and sounded like my mum, but she was gradually losing capacity to do things. And I was living in for want of a better word, I'm not sure it's the right word, living in a state of constant disbelief. Little things, it was a case of, but why can't you do that, mum? You know, you've always done this for the last, all my life, since forever, you're doing things. And the nature of Alzheimer's or dementia, as I'm sure a lot of people will know, is totally unpredictable. If I was still working at the time, and I'd be coming home, living with my mum at that stage because of her illness, and I literally didn't know what I was going to find. Sometimes I'd open the front door, and she'd have the oven on, the gas oven on, but no flame. So the house would be full of gas. She would go walking, because she was still physically fit, walking and forget where she lived. These kind of things. And it sounds like bizarre when I say this. It sounds like a small thing possibly, but the biggest thing is my mum, like a lot of ladies of a certain age, was fastidiously clean. Fastidiously. You know, she would drag me for a weekly bath when I was young, and I hated it, so I hated it. And she'd always got her hair done, at least once a week. Even though to me, as a mere man, looked the same, she always got her hair done every single week. And she had this great, almost like laboratory of stuff to use in the bathroom as part of her kind of hygiene care. And I can remember vividly to this day, the first time I realised she couldn't buy the stuff herself anymore. And okay, I'll get my mum's toiletries because it's still my mum. You know, she still smells like my mum, looks like my mum. I was still endeavoured to buy the same kind of stuff in the bathroom. And for Guy, you go to the toiletries counter and you get one bowl of everything, hair, face, skin, does the whole job lot. And it sounds like a joke, and it's funny to look back now. It wasn't funny at the time, but it sounds funny now. When I went to try and buy toiletries for my mum, I was overwhelmed with the sheer choice of different shampoos. I mean, for me, I go and buy shampoo for myself. It's one shampoo, one bottle, body, hair, face, the whole job lot. And it must have been 30 different types of shampoo I was looking at. And I remember just standing there thinking, what do I buy? Dry hair, coloured hair, delicate. What kind of hair does my mum have? I've never done this before. And it was a real challenge for me. And it just felt, it felt, what's what I'm looking for? This doesn't make any sense. It just felt wrong on so many levels that I was having to kind of help my mum wash, bathe. And it felt, even though at that stage, I know if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. She can do it herself and she would become unhygienic. And my mum wouldn't want that, not at all.
No.
So I had to do it. But it still felt, it still felt wrong. Does that make sense? I mean, as a grown man, you kind of think to yourself, not many things that can shock you as you get older. And the sensible part of your brain says, well, just do it. It has to be done. Just do it. But the other side of my brain was that little boy, my mum's baby, kind of going, I shouldn't be doing it. My mum was my mum. Wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Not in a million years. But it had to be done.
But that relationship is kind of flipped on its head now. You've almost taken on that parental role for your mum. Tamara, is that something that you see a lot in your work that creates kind of real difficulties, maybe particularly for caring for parents, where that caring role has switched places?
Well, yes, enormously. Thinking about the family as a system. So that system operates. People take on certain roles within that system. So she's the competent one. He does all the blue jobs. She's the emotional one, or he's the emotional one. One of the kids is always on top of the social aspect of things. Everybody's got a defined role within a system. Somebody changes significantly in that system, and the whole system has got to change around that differing role. So if he's the competent one, or if he's the emotional one, or she's and they become ill and can no longer fulfill that role within that system, it's got to reconfigure itself. So if he was the emotional one, who's talking about how are you feeling now? Who's looking after that? Does that fall to the 14-year-old now, who learns a different role within this system? And it does reconfigure. I think, Darren, you've spoken so movingly about still my mum. So whilst we can sort of on an intellectual level sort of think about families as a system and do that have a kind of reconfigurating conversation, there's a mourning to be done about the loss of what was previously available to you, about the loss of that relationship, and almost like an objection. This isn't supposed to happen. What's happened? It really comes to terms with the mourning of that previous relationship, and the anger or resentment or rage against the injustice of it. So yeah, lots of.
I think you're right, Tamara. I think a lot of carers have go through the grieving process before the actual passing of the person, or the end of their caring responsibilities, because throughout a caring journey your relationship changes, and as that changes, we're all human. We wish we still had what we had, and we grieve for what we no longer have and the changes in that person. And I think that is a natural part of caring, anticipatory grief. And I think I would say probably 90% of carers have some form of that throughout their caring journey, and it's just a normal and natural thing to sometimes sit, as Darren's just said, and think, I just wish I had my mum back. I wish I just had Ian back. I wish they were just the way they used to be, and not now. I wish I'm not in this situation. And that's just a normal, natural thing, I think.
Do you think there's also a challenge for the person cared for, particularly in maybe like we're thinking about Darren's situation, and as that illness progresses, there's maybe a change in the awareness of what the situation is. But do you think at early days, Darren, was that kind of challenging for your mum to have to allow some things that she would have preferred to be in control of herself?
I think it was, because having seen her father go through something with Alzheimer's, and seeing how he stopped being her dad for a long time, and different symptoms. But I think she became aware that she would sometimes try to say something to me and mix up her words a few times, or after he was speaking to me and lose her path, and she'd kind of go, but she couldn't find the words. And, this is a woman that's wanted to read and write.
Yeah.
And she couldn't find the words. And you can see she wanted to say it. She in her head, she could form the words. And I'd be saying, okay, Mum, so, for example, so, so what do you want me to get for dinner tonight, for example? And she would say, I want to get, don't bother. But she couldn't find the words. And you could sense the boiling frustration inside. And it was really hard to say. It really was.
The illness itself is very frustrating, and then the loss of just her own self-determination can be really challenging. Mahinder, you've been so patiently waiting for us in these questions. I would really love to hear your thoughts on a couple of things. One thing that I think was just really touching, of course, you spoke about your wife's health situation and the subsequent discovery that maybe different treatment would have been helpful rather than the very invasive treatment that was received. But do you think, in terms of that relationship, maybe particularly again between husband and wife in your case, but actually any carer with their relationship with the person that they are caring for, do you think it's important to still try and retain elements of that relationship as it was in the early days or before the health issue? Is there anything you think that's really valuable to try and maintain that relationship itself?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I'm still quite early listening to the stories. I'm quite early in my caregiver journey, really. So it's all still pretty much new and fresh. But definitely, I think it's essential to retain those elements as it was before, because there's aspects of my wife's memory loss, and that's challenging. She's, what we do is we keep those conversations going and reminisce and share experiences. I think that's really vital. It's helped kind of preserve a lot of kind of continuity and connection with each other. Yeah, she's changed in many ways, as I've explained. Having 3 centimeters of your and there's a reason for me explaining that, because just trying to think about what that actually means to how your brain is kind of formed and the connectors, and now not having those, there's certain sensations and certain damage that's gone and not going to be able to kind of reconnect. So she's still the same person. Like, it's not that, like, similar to what Darren was saying, you're still physically seeing the same person, and she is the same person, to me, and it's complicated. Not every day is the same. You kind of see that difference, but you also recognize the familiar traits. So we've always made sure that we kind of include her in every conversation and still decision making, whether it's big or small. And yeah, we still maintain that we're husband and wife. We're still husband and wife, and we have a responsibility as partners, and we still make those decisions about our daughter. So we've got to maintain those kind of dynamics. And that's helped us kind of hold on to who we are together.
That's lovely. And that ties in a little bit with what you were speaking about earlier, Claire Louise. And Tamara, what are your thoughts in terms of maybe for lots of people listening, there may be that change in a relationship which actually impacts on the person cared for their maybe long-term cognitive abilities. What are some things that we can do to really retain those relationships to the very best extent?
I don't know what your experience, Claire Louise, was of maintaining what you did have with Ian.
I mean, it was difficult. I'm not saying it was a walk in the park, but I never let the fact that it was difficult mean that I didn't try to do it. I think Mahinder's, right. It is important. I think you have to sometimes badge things in different ways. So if, for example, like, you're talking about children, say there was a problem with my daughter with school or whatever, I would kind of go in already with a solution. But I would kind of maybe badge it in a way so it made it look like we'd come to the solution jointly, if that makes sense, because I knew he wouldn't be able to do that. So it would be like, oh, well, I think, we could maybe do it this way and we could do that. And, that's the best way I think we could tackle it. What do you think? And then it was like more of a simple yes, no answer rather than him having to actually think of a solution because his brain didn't work like that. So it was just, I think, mainly we had to maybe adapt the way that we interacted with him in certain situations. So he was still involved, but he wasn't put in that uncomfortable situation where he felt like a spare arm and that he wasn't actually contributing to family life. And it is a really, really fine line. I probably made 100 mistakes, all the way through it, because I think we all do. None of us are fallible. None of us are perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. It's then maybe learning from those mistakes. And, the first time you're in a situation when you say to him, okay, well, what do you think? And he sits there and looks at you blankly because he's got no idea what to say. Then you think, okay, well, next time I have this conversation, I'm going to have options. Or I'm going to have to come up with a solution and badge it in that way so he doesn't sit there and feel like, oh, hang on, I'm on the spot, I don't know what to do. So it's just kind of adapting the way that you deal with those relationships. So you've still got them, they're still your husband or your mother or your child or whatever, but it's badging it in a way that they are then still involved and still feel like part of the family and that they've got a purpose. Because I think it's very, very easy for somebody being cared for to maybe feel like they no longer have a purpose especially as the illness deteriorates.
I think that what you and Mahinda have demonstrated is real thought. You've considered them. You want to bring them back into the family. You want to bring them back into the relationship. You've done such a beautiful job of thinking about it. Well, you might have made 100 mistakes as well, but that giving it thought. Good relationships don't just happen. Good relationships, they need work. It's like anything. You leave the garden without work, and it's going to grow weeds and bad plants and things like that. It needs tending, and it feels like you've done a really, really lovely job of that. But and that's. I suppose that's where counselling can help you in terms of your own self-care. It gives you the time. I just want to think about what's going on here. I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to orientate myself around what I've just said. Is that really what I think? Or do I want to do something differently? How can I preserve this relationship when this person has passed? What do I want? How do I want to remember myself as being in this at that time?
I think it's quite also difficult trying to make those decisions all by yourself as well. So I think that's why I kept my wife informed with everything. And even if it's
lonely.
Yeah, I was gonna say even if it was just to say, do what you think's kind of best kind of thing or whatever, or I know that you'll do the best or whatever, but it was just so that you could carry on having those conversations. And for me, right in the beginning, because she was on like morphine and loads of like really strong medication, a lot of the decisions came on to me, and I found it just immensely so much pressure and really, really difficult of me trying to make a decision for another adult. I never kind of thought I'd be in that position, and it was difficult. But as she kind of got progressed and got better, I kept her informed with everything, and it just kind of made things a lot better instead of me trying to kind of deal with things all by myself. Even sometimes I knew what the answer was, I needed to ask and just get that kind of confirmation. So that helped, yeah, because otherwise it's just you doing all those things by yourself, and that's really difficult.
I think you're right. I think Tamara hit on an important point as well, which is making sure that as carers we also take time for ourselves, because that helps the relationship. I think if I hadn't have had, I was quite lucky. My mum and dad moved in next door to me to help and support me with caring. And they didn't probably do as much as they could have because they're quite elderly and I didn't really want to do things. But it was even simple things like, as Ian progressed, he couldn't be left alone. And I didn't feel it was right to leave the children in charge because, they were only 14 and 7 or whatever. My maths is terrible, by the way. He might have been younger or older than 7. But you can see why I wasn't a tax inspector. But yeah, it kind of wasn't their responsibility as such. But then because my mum and dad was there, I would like say, right, can you look after Ian for an hour because I'm going out for a walk with my friend, because I needed that time as well. Because as much as you are a carer, and that is your, you know, first and most important relationship in some ways, because you are looking after somebody, and as Mahinda said, you know, every decision that sometimes you have to make, you know, affects them. You also have to look after yourself and your own well-being. And I think if I hadn't have made time for myself, I'd be a raving lunatic now. Because if all I had done was care for Ian and the kids constantly and never went out or did anything, it would have been so difficult. And sometimes it is difficult to put yourself first as a carer and to think about your own needs, but you have to, because like I'm the deputy chair of the Carers Network in HMRC now. And as I always say to other carers, you know, your relationship will suffer if you don't also look after yourself. Plus, you know, you have to look after your own well-being, because if something happens to you, then who looks after the person you care for? And it is all connected. You know, and just because they're poorly doesn't mean they don't get on your nerves. Do you know what I mean? And I used to go out with my mate and we used to be like, oh my God, he's just a pain in the backside. He's doing this, he's doing that. Ugh. And it was like just the way you would moan about your partner normally. You know, I always try to still do that, because again, his illness didn't define him. And as much as I cared for him, that didn't mean he wasn't annoying, and I didn't have to vent that somewhere. So I think it is important also to make sure you do take time for yourself and time away from the person you're caring for, because that actually improves your relationship the way it does in a normal relationship. You know, people who are married don't spend 24/7 constantly with each other. You know, you have your own friends, you go to work, you do this, you do that.
Yeah,
and it's important to still do that, because
yeah.
that actually enhances the relationship as well.
Just something that Darren said earlier about the unpredictable nature of Alzheimer's, and you don't know what you're going to go home to and how that person's going to be and what you might expect. I think there's something about being a carer that there's it can be such an unpredictable nature. You know, so such an unpredictable nature to it. I'm thinking about Mahinda's experience as well of, well, hang on a minute, we thought it was that. Now you're telling me this is something else. So constantly having to readjust, constantly having to change the way you think about things. And you think you've got it licked, and then this happens. I've just got my head around this bit, and now you're giving me that.
I think it's
sorry,
Darren. No, let's go on. Sorry, Darren, carry on.
I think when I'm talking about maintaining a relationship with the person you're caring for is I always called my mum and spoke to her. Always did. And one of the strangest things that happened as my mum's dementia progressed is she knew my voice, but didn't know my face. So in her mind, she was looking for a little boy. I'm youngest in the family. So she was looking, if I spoke to her, you could see her looking around, trying to find a little boy. Not this big hairy man standing in front of her, talking to her. She'd be thinking, where's Darren? And yeah, if I said hello, mum, you could see her eyes light up. And that's not bigging myself up in any way. She could see, she recognized her voice. That's my little boy calling me. Where's my little boy? Where's my little boy? And I'll be there going, Mum, and she'll be going, you're not Darren, you're some big hairy guy. You know my baby, that kind of thing. But in a very tiny way, still maintain that relationship. It was really key to us, I think.
Yeah. Mahinda, what were you going to add there as well? Earlier?
Well, I was just going to say about different relationships and how Tamara just pointed out when we found out about the misdiagnosis. We didn't really know until months later. So we got ourselves a golden retriever who's just been like amazing in my wife's recovery. But I can talk about that later. But yeah, amazing. We took him to the vets, and it meant that he had to stay overnight, and they had to operate on him. And my wife just broke down. She just broke down in the vets. And obviously the trigger of still very much with her. So although she doesn't talk about it much, it's still very much still around, that kind of trauma. So the relationship with health professionals and hospitals and anything to do with operations and all that isn't great after. And I'm trying to make that kind of link with still having that trauma of being had a big operation and not needed to have had. So that kind of makes you a bit more yeah, I suppose traumatized in terms of your relationship with kind of health professionals, which is difficult because you know you're supposed to have health professionals to you know have a place where you can go if you need, if there's particular issues, but there's also almost a bit of an angst and a bit of anxiety around that now.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's a something that I hadn't even thought about, is that relationship with the professional agencies that are involved in, because when we're carers, there's lots of other agencies that we're maybe engaging with. So whether that's people who are parent carers and they're dealing with school systems, education systems, or we're dealing with health and social care, all of those kind of people are involved. And as you mentioned, even the medical teams, those relationships really are vital because we need to be able to depend on them. I want to open up the conversation because we focused a lot on the relationship that we have as carers with perhaps the person that we care for. And we've touched a little bit even on just the relationship that maybe we have with ourselves and our own well-being. But I'd love to open this up a little bit into how the caring role can sometimes affect our relationships in a broader context, our social lives, our family interactions, even perhaps with work colleagues. At this point, maybe could I share with you guys, we were supposed to have another panelist with us. And I think everybody who's on this panel and everybody who's in our audience will understand that actually, when it came to the recording sessions that we'd set up for today, family obligations had to come first. And so this other carer was not able to join us, but she very kindly gave me permission to just share a little bit about her experience. And Tamara, I'd really love to get your thoughts on this one because it's a slightly different type of caring role. So this lady, her son had some additional needs, and so she was a parent carer for him through his childhood, through primary school. What she said at that time was one of the big challenges that she had with relationships, not really with her son, but just in the wider context, because things were a bit unpredictable, she would be cancelling arrangements, not able to turn up, having to, she said sometimes she just had to prioritise her own time to replenish her own reserves rather than time spent with other people, even friends and other family members. She mentioned even sometimes within the family, maybe the wider family dynamic, there could be some little kind of challenges going on which she felt were undermining in terms of her decisions that she was making as a parent. So maybe even just some challenging relationship issues there with her wider family. As he grew up, of course, different things that they experienced and they dealt with those as they came along. But a little while ago, I think I'm right in saying maybe around 18 months ago, she got word that her son had a child. This is a little grandchild of hers now, who at that point was 2.5 years old. But because of some challenges that the child's mother had, in addition to her own son maybe not being just as able as he would like to be, the child had spent quite a lot of time in foster care, and by the time the child was 2.5 years old, had already been, I think she says, in maybe up to 5 different foster homes. So this is now a little child with some challenges that are going on as well, perhaps behavioural challenges, some learning difficulties that were becoming evident. Our carer friend was awarded special guardianship, so she is now a kinship carer. But what I found really interesting, I mean, there's been a lot that she's had going on in her life and in her journey as a carer, not only for her son and with all of the kind of the impact on other relationships, but at the age of 2.5, her grandchild met her for the first time. So you've got to immediately develop a family bond and a relationship with this little child. She's now responsible for this child's development, supporting their relationships as they move through and navigate life. But again, we've got that challenge for her that, of course, that caring role for her is a very intense one, all-consuming sometimes, and the socializing, the family connections that you might have expected to have had also again suffer. That's a very potted history, and it may even be that our friend, our carer friend who might have joined us today will be able to join into the live Q&A, so we might get a little bit more of her story if she's able to join us at the end of the session. But I'd be really interested, Tamara, in your thoughts in terms of those kind of challenges, maybe those feelings of isolation when carers are having to prioritise their own personal needs or the needs of the person that they're caring for, but missing out on the social and other family connections. Is that something you see a lot of for carers?
Yeah, yes, I think it is. And it's a loss of liberty, isn't there? It's a loss of liberty to want, you're no longer able to live the life that you want to live. And I guess it's not just mourning about previous relationships that you might have had with the person you're caring for, but it's about a previous life you're mourning for too.
Yeah.
And anger about that. This has got now to be. I feel for the person, your caring colleague that you talked about, because she's kind of, here we go again, doing it all over again. And that act of generosity is remarkable, really, isn't it? And so she's got a 2.5-year-old with multiple broken attachments, a history of multiple broken attachments, and that can be deeply troubling for a small child who doesn't have a sense of safety. Who are you now? Different boundaries, different rules, different roles. I don't know what to expect. I'll just do things my way, and you've got to suck it up. The person you're talking about has got there are challenges ahead, and yes, she's that supreme act of generosity once again is going to be, and that loss of liberty. And thinking about wider families, everybody will have an opinion as well.
Yeah.
Everybody will have an opinion.
Claire Louise's face.
I have to see that.
Yeah. I think it's right. I think it again, as much as your relationship changes with the person you care for, all your relationships change overnight, because all of a sudden, where you could just say, oh yeah, I'll be at such and such on so and so, you can't plan anything ahead because you never know what's around the corner. Everything has to be kind of planned and done at really short notice. I mean, even holidays for us, when Ian was going through treatment and scanning and everything, we would have a 3-month window where we knew we had kind of had the all clear and we could maybe have a holiday. So we could never plan anything in advance, basically. You're right. Some people also cannot cope with the disability that the person now has as easily, or even accept that they have challenges, and maybe that can cause problems with relationships. And I mean, I'll put my hand up, and I don't think people did it out of nastiness or badness, and I don't hold any ill will to anybody. But I know when Ian got ill, I don't have as many friends as I used to have, because I think, not because people are horrible, I think in a lot of cases people just do not know what to say to you, and they don't know how to cope with it. So rather than being open and honest with you, they just kind of slowly disappear into the ether. And again, some of these people I had known for years, again, I think you mentioned relationships at work. I was quite lucky through my work and journey with Ian. I worked with one person through the whole time, and he was like my rock. We don't even work in the same building, we work at opposite ends of the country, but he was always on the phone. If ever I needed to disappear, he would say, right, just go, I'll pick up what needs to be done and all of that. But for us to have that relationship again, I was completely open and honest with everybody I worked with about exactly what was going on and where, what stage we were at with Ian's disability, with his illness. What I couldn't do. I had a carer's passport, which I had agreed, things with my manager. But I think part of helping to keep those wider relationships is being as open and honest as you can, because I think a lot of people hide things because they think it gives maybe the person they're looking after more dignity, or, well, that's a family thing, you don't tell people about this. I kind of went the opposite way, and I told everybody as much information as I could, because then they understood fully what we were going through, so they could give us the correct support, and understand that, I'm not just being funny that I can't go to this. I literally can't go to this because of A, B, and C.
Yeah. So some people don't want to tell the wider world. Some people still associate illness with shame. And we haven't really touched on mental ill health. There's a lot of shame around, having a wife, partner, mother, daughter who's got serious mental health concerns. So, to the point where there might be abuse and things like that from them. And there's a level of shame associated with that, and shame's best friend is silence.
And again, everybody's
closes everything down.
Yeah, everybody's situation is different. Everybody deals with things differently. That was the way I dealt with it. because I just thought it's better to let people know exactly what's going on, and then they can deal with it. Obviously, I didn't have maybe some of the issues that other people have, and like we say, every caring journey is different, but that's the way I found, and because of that, I've got such good working relationships, the people I work with. I had so much support at work, and as much as I had some people disappear into the ether, never to be seen again, I've actually got some friends where the relationship is stronger now because of maybe my caring responsibilities, and because I was completely open and honest with them about things, and I think they appreciated that, because in some ways it does affect them as much as it affects me.
That's really interesting, and I think that's a nice point really to highlight as we start to move towards the end of this session. I think that's a really nice point, and it has come out for me, that has come out in everybody's experiences and the things that you've commented on today, Tamara. The initial when we talk about caring and relationships, initially we might be thinking, oh, it destroys relationships, it makes it very challenging, we lose friends, we feel isolated, and that is the experience, and for a lot of carers they do have those experiences. But I think what's really nice and really encouraging is that for each of your experiences today, you've also spoken about a deepening in some relationships. So each of you has spoken about that really deep relationship that you've developed, even maybe more so with the person that you care for. You mentioned, Claire Louise, even with your children, really making great memories. Mahinder, you spoke very, very beautifully about just really cherishing those times with your wife when it's that relationship, it's just you and your wife, and making sure that that's the absolute solid basis for that relationship. And Darren, when you spoke about your mum, like, that's when she hears your voice, that's her wee boy. Such touching things, but really nice actually to hear also that there are some things that we can do also to make sure that our wider circle, our wider community, which is our support network, also that they're still a part of that, and we develop those relationships. So as we draw to the end of this recorded part of the session, I'd love to just ask each one of you a question, and maybe just a couple of things. Keep it nice and brief and succinct. A couple of things that each one of you have found as being really helpful in either maintaining your social connections with the wider circle, or something that you've really found has been just a really solid thing for maintaining your own sense of well-being. Mahinder, could we come to you first for that?
So yeah, my social circle is definitely listening to Claire Louise. Is my social circle has definitely gone smaller, and I don't really see the people and enjoy the things that I used to enjoy. However, things like again, Claire Louise picked on, I'm meeting other people that are carers now, so through my carers network and networking, I'm getting people kind of contacting me. I've done a blog at work which received loads of comments. I'm having people come up to me and ask me, what's a carer's passport, how did you get that in place, what can you do? I had somebody last week just message me back, say thank you for our talk. As a result of our talk, I've got myself a carer's passport, and I just wanted to let you know. And so yes, some relationships are fizzling out or ending, but there's other relationships that are thriving now, and that's really kind of supporting me. So I think that's a great thing. I think also staff networks are great things. Just move away for the carer stuff, but I'm with a faith and belief. So when I had gaps in what was happening with my wife, and I kind of filled that in with faith. So I'm so grateful for DWP to have a faith and belief space where I can go in and in my lunch break do a bit of like mindfulness and things like that. So I'm getting other kind of relationships. So where there's gaps now, I'm filling them in with other things, which is just taking my journey or direction to another way.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Thanks.
To help navigate through this. Yeah.
Thanks for highlighting those networks as being a really key support service. We can talk a little bit maybe about those in the Q&A session, and maybe even help people access some information. Darren, what about for yourself? What kinds of, is there maybe one thing or a couple of things that you have found really useful to just keep yourself grounded during your journey and supporting your mum?
Okay, I think what it was, when my mum was ill, my kind of social circle evaporated, basically, because then mum's illness becomes so unpredictable. Everything I was doing was totally reactive. I mean, a couple of mornings a week, my mum would get up 2 o'clock in the morning, want to go outside, go and see her mum and dad, that kind of thing. Or sometimes she'd wake up having had an accident in the night. So a lot of my time was dealing with that, which again, my mum wouldn't want, as my mum. And my advice to anybody in that situation is, if you find yourself caring for someone who's seriously unwell, find a support group, whether it be internal in your department, external, or both, and don't be afraid to reach out to them. And my advice would be, do it sooner rather than later, because people didn't reach out when they're in crisis and on their knees, and by that time, of course, everything's frantic and you can't think logically. You haven't got time. You're tired. Do it sooner, even if you don't think you need it at that time. Reach out, because you leave it until it's too late. It's not a pretty place to be in. So reach out and get help. There's no shame in that at all.
Lovely. That's a really nice encouragement, Darren, to say, and a really practical encouragement. Don't leave it till it's a crisis. Get that support. Make sure you're supported. So hopefully we avert the crisis. Claire Louise, what about for you? Is there maybe one or two things that you have found really useful supporting yourself and maintaining relationships?
Yeah, when I had the time and when I could, I would get out. I think I've already mentioned it. I would go for walks with my friend. We would just talk about absolute rubbish, you know, like Love at First Sight Australia or some kind of absolute nonsense. Just to, you know, just take your mind off it totally and have a bit of a laugh and a giggle. Mindfulness, I did try, couldn't get away with, but I do knit. And I find knit.
Great. Excellent.
Oh, yeah, that's my saviour. And I used to actually go to a couple of knit and natter groups. Unfortunately, most of them died during COVID, but I've still got some knitting friends, and I find that has really, really helped my well-being. It is a form of mindfulness in a way, because you're doing something, you don't have to think about it or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did. I did a lot of knitting. And
jumpers for everyone.
Yeah, and I tried to get out as much as I can when I could, obviously depending on Ian and what else was going on with children, but I did try and make time for myself, even if it was just half an hour having a coffee and just like I say, talking about something completely irrelevant, nothing to do with Ian, nothing to do with kids, just rubbish. And I found that really helped me.
Oh, super. And Tamara, final word to you in terms of, is there a top tip that you would often suggest for carers to really help them look after themselves or maintain their relationships?
Difficult to follow such a sane trio who are doing such an awful lot right. With the knitting thing's an interesting one. What research has come to show us is that hand to eye movement stuff. So when you have to do something with your hands, and you've got to engage your vision with something that you're doing manually with your hands, has a huge self-soothing impact on the brain. Huge. That's why, you know, men experience the sheds and mess about with woodwork and things like that. And women knit, I guess. The other thing I would say is, you know, when you are losing it, that's all right. I mean, there are boundaries around that. Don't be frightened of your feelings. They're just feelings. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to be angry. You're going to be full of rage. You're going to be full of sadness, and that's all right. That's all right. They'll pass. Don't be frightened of them. There's no right way to do this.
Oh, that's a really nice way to finish, to say you know, we just accept what we're doing, do our very best, accept our mistakes that we sometimes make, but recognize that we're just everybody's in it together and supporting each other. What a lovely conversation. I cannot thank you guys enough. I think for me personally, it's been really touching to hear your stories, to see how you've navigated those challenges. Tamara, your expertise is absolutely super to have that with us today. So what we're going to say now is for this portion of the session, we're going to finish up now. But what I'm hoping is that our audience are going to stay with us for the live Q&A. We're going to have Claire Louise, Mahinder, Darren, Tamara and myself. We'll be jumping into a live session now with you, so please do. We would love to hear from you. If something that maybe has been said on the panel today has really touched you, if it's resonated, if your own experience, or if you'd like to share your top tips. Are you a champion knitter? Are you great at woodwork? Do you do the mindfulness? What do you do to support your well-being at those times? And maybe even you want to share if you've had challenging experiences, because we're going to have the wonderful Tamara staying with us for the Q&A. So it may even be that we'll be able to get some more great advice from Relate in terms of what we can all do to support ourselves and the people that we are caring for. So for now, we're going to say goodbye for this part, and we'll see you in a minute in the live Q&A.
Thank you.
And here we are live again with you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session today. I hope you did find it helpful, and perhaps for those of you who are joining who are carers, maybe you've seen your own experience reflected in Darren, Mahinder and Claire Louise's stories. So we've got plenty of time now for some questions or to hear your comments, to see your thoughts. So if you haven't already submitted something, please use the chat and do that now. But we already have some lined up. And we're going to go straight into it. So the first question that we've got, I struggle with guilt when it comes to trying to have a bit of life outside of caring responsibilities. Are there any tips that have helped you? Claire Louise, do you mind if we come to you first for that one? Because I think actually you talked a little bit about kind of, you're not always 24/7 with your partner. Did you find any feelings of guilt? What did you do to overcome that?
Yeah, I found it really difficult at first. Because again, your whole situation's kind of turned on the spin of a coin. You don't really know what your new norm is, and you probably dedicate more time than you would with the partner or the person that you're looking after. I think gradually over time, and I don't think it was that long a time for me, I came to realise that actually, I'm going to have to cope with this guilt because I still need to be me as well. I might still be a carer and that's not going to change, but I am still me and I still have my needs and I still have my sanity and my mental health that has to be looked after. So maybe I was quite selfish with it and quite black and white with it. Tips that helped me, having friends that understood that I had that. As much as I would like to always spend time with them, sometimes I would have to cancel at short notice. So sometimes, we would organise to do things and then I would be ringing half an hour beforehand saying, instead of or, this has happened, I can't now come. And I think having the understanding of the people that I was making the plans with really helped. And I think just what also helped me was just short periods of time. So I think I mentioned, didn't I, in the pre-record that I would go for little walks with a friend who doesn't live far away from me. So I would literally be out for half an hour. And if you think about it, half an hour, that's how long I would maybe take to have a shower or, if I was lucky, or whatever. So it's just using that half an hour that maybe you would use in the house to do something, but getting out and doing something else with it with somebody else. I think, again, being as open and honest as I could with people about the situation so they understood that I did cancel. It's not, I'm always going to cancel because some relationships did change, as we also discussed in that call. So, some people couldn't cope with things being changed at the last minute and they stopped asking you to do things or inviting you to places. And again, that's part of life, and some people can cope with different situations, some people can't. That's that. There's nothing you can do about it. But it's clicking on to people that can support you and help you, and maybe just being as open and honest as you can, and trying to find those little half an hours, even if it's just going to the local cafe and having a cup of tea on your own with your book. It gets you out. That's what I think.
Oh, thanks, Claire Louise. Tamara, you must see that a lot when you're speaking to carers, that sort of sense of that feeling of guilt that maybe they have when they're really trying to just look after their own well-being. Is there anything that you would typically say to people to help them?
Yeah, yes. I think if you go down, it all goes down, doesn't it? If you're not looking after you, then nobody gets looked after. If you can't do it for you, because there's some people who do struggle with putting themselves, prioritizing themselves. And if you can't do it for you, tell yourself that you're doing it for them.
Thank you so much.
Tell yourself that you're doing this for you so you can stay available for them.
Yeah, that's a great thing, and good for us actually just to realize that even for ourselves. That is why we're looking after ourselves, so that we can continue to look after them. There's a second question, and actually, Tamara, I'd like to come to you first on this one. So the question is, my family siblings don't agree on all care needs, visits, etc. Is there any advice on managing these family conflicts without causing further damage to relationships? So I imagine that might be something that you do come across when you're supporting families with caring roles.
Yeah, and I guess everybody's circumstances are different. So if you are a partner, wife, husband, then that responsibility is very firmly yours. if you've got lasting power of attorney, those responsibilities stay with you. People will always have an opinion. People will always have an opinion. But I mean, there need to be boundaries. Those opinions do need to be boundaries. You know, thanks for that suggestion. But I'm going to give it some thought. Staying respectful, isn't it? Staying respectful and
that's good. Yeah, and that actually does kind of tie in a little bit with, I think, what all of the panelists, Claire Louise, Mohinder and Darren, all said earlier about being open with people, being honest, and maybe communication is a key element there in making sure that people understand what the boundaries are. But I like that suggestion, Claire, Tamara, to say thank you for your suggestion. Let me think about that.
Yeah, and it's that thing about, you know, just asking for grace and goodwill in these are challenging times. You just need to bear with me. I'm doing my best. That's it. I'm just doing my best.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Mohinder, perhaps I could come to you for this next question. The question is, are there any tips for staying strong with boundaries to other people who might not understand your priorities are different now as a carer and you can't always do everything? Because I think you mentioned sometimes maybe the social circle has sort of reduced a little bit. So were there any things that you had to do to just maybe explain that and set those boundaries in place?
Good question. So it's a good question, because when this happened in the beginning, that circle went smaller and smaller. So actually, there wasn't a lot of people interfering in everything that I did. But the people that did, they come from a good place. I don't really particularly take angst to anybody telling me to do anything in a particular way, because perhaps people have had experience, obviously, with my wife's situation. It just came out of nowhere, so I was quite open to taking on people's opinions. So I think when people are more respectful and they come from a good place, and it's quite good to take on those suggestions. But I think it's just about creating those boundaries and accepting that what people are telling you is never from a bad place. It may be examples that they have, and that can help you navigate. So always make sure that I do listen attentively, and make sure I take on board whatever anybody was saying. But I've never had any kind of like real disagreements or challenges or anything like that. And yeah, so I don't think I've actually had that kind of position where I've been. I don't know if anybody else could perhaps come in on that.
Yeah, maybe I could direct that to Tamara, actually, because you just mentioned a moment ago setting those boundaries and recognizing that maybe you're the person responsible for making the decisions. How can you stay strong once you have maybe established, here's some boundaries, here's the limits? How do you stay strong with that? Because the opinions might keep on coming. How do you do that, Tamara?
Yeah, I guess I think, yeah, it's demonstrating that you've heard, that you've listened, but you've weighed things up and on balance. Sometimes when we can't make sense of our thoughts, it's all a bit jumbled. You might write them down and think about it on a scale of 1 to 10. Where does that decision? How certain I am about that decision on a scale of 1 to 10? How certain am I that I've made that decision? And then when you're starting to wobble a bit, just remind yourself, I've revisited this. It's an 8 out of 10. I'm so decided on this, and just using that scale as a reminder to yourself.
And thank you for that. And I think probably with this panel, we've got with Darren, Claire Louise and Mohinder, we've probably got people who were the primary carers, and that was their role. For many of our audience, we might have people who are maybe caring with other people for someone. So that can typically be maybe when siblings are caring for an older parent, and maybe just actually creating those kind of communication lines is not always as easy when maybe one wants something different to the other. Darren, any thoughts from you on that? In terms of maybe, have you ever had to, like when you were caring for your mum, ever had to sort of set any boundaries in terms of other people's opinions or thoughts?
I did, specifically in terms of work, because the job I had at the time, which I've still got now, is quite time-bound driven. There's a lot of deadlines, seem to be very, very stringent, working with ministers' offices and so on and so forth. So the actual deadline is very inflexible. And the way I got around it was just being open and honest with people, explaining what the situation was. and just saying, look, not being slow on this because I'm being lazy or slumping shoulders. It's a case of distribution men, and to be honest with you, my mum's wellbeing's got to come first. So I'll do it as soon as I possibly can. Or if I can't get to something, this is why I'm not being antisocial or unfriendly or anything like that. It's a case of my situation at the moment doesn't permit me. And it's a case of being open and honest and saying to people, look, guys, the person you knew before, I'm not the same person because of this. I'm still doing the best I can. But obviously, in the situation I'm in, I can't do as much. Well, not as much. I can't do the same amount in the same timescale as I was. And this is why. Just everything at the table trying to say, I'm sorry, guys, this is me. The new version of me, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So open communication again, where that's been. Go ahead, Mahinder.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say that just reminds me of my mum being a lot older, and she has her own issues regarding her health and stuff. So there's times where, not from a bad place, but where she has asked for support and help, and then I've got to kind of balance that and the boundaries regarding that. So that's just, and it is all just about having open conversations and really honest conversations and difficult conversations, especially if you're not used to that, but just having honest conversations and putting your viewpoints across in a way where you're not particularly upsetting anyone, but letting everyone know that things have changed and I'm not able to do the things that I was able to do. But yeah, it's just trying to navigate those, and it's just about who you have, and it's about the people around you, and you're understanding those kind of dynamics and personalities of what you can say to some people and what you can't say to others. So it is difficult, because if you're not really great with that kind of communication, I've never had those skills, or you've just happened to have fallen into this situation, it's hard to kind of switch and just kind of understand how to start talking to people. So it's taken some time from the beginning to having difficult conversations to now people are kind of understanding it, because you're getting better at communicating, but then people are getting better at listening as well.
That's a nice thought, actually. It's about getting better at communicating and also getting better at listening. That's a great key thing to remember. Tamara, again, I'd like to come to you first on this question. So we've got a question has been submitted. Mum's family don't bother. I presume that means don't bother with mum since she got ill, and I don't understand. It makes me so angry. Any advice on how to approach this without just getting mad? I've already asked why and I get no response. So we've been talking a lot about the importance of communication. So any ideas in terms of how we can open that type of conversation to maybe get some extra support, or even just some social support for the person cared for?
People have their own responses to difficult circumstances, don't they? You know, I think we talked in the pre-record about people get frightened of this stuff, don't know what to do, don't know what to say, don't know how to talk about it, don't know how to approach it, don't want to overcommit, don't want to get lumbered with this. I mean, one of the things that this person might do is come up with a list, a rota on, you know, the second Tuesday of every month. Can you just come and sit with me, mum? That's all I'm asking of you. That's all I'm asking of you. Once a month, if you could nip round and do the shopping, that would be fantastic. And that's all I'm asking of you. You know, so to manage their expectations and also manage your expectations. It's a bit like, you know, you can't stay mad, because bottom line is you can't control people. They're not people can disappoint us.
Yeah.
But I guess it's sort of, I wonder if it's offering solutions as opposed to offering something tangible. Can you just do that?
Do you think, Tamara, sometimes do people, you know, maybe on the sort of the next level out or on the periphery of that caring role, do you think they sometimes get a bit nervous that they're going to be drawn into something that will be overwhelming for them?
Yes, I mean, I do. I'm wondering about the person that's behind this question and how they are. You know, if they're becoming overwhelmed and just don't get it, don't understand why, you know, what support is this person getting as well. I'm wondering about that.
Yes.
But people get frightened of particularly, I mean, I don't know how poorly mum is. But if it's you know, if there's a lot of caring needs, then people do sort of want to manage, keep it at a distance, and then I don't get lumbered. Yes,
exactly. But then, of course, the net effect of that is the person who is the primary carer themselves as feeling overwhelmed, and then that's quite challenging. So a great suggestion there, Tamara, actually offer people just a tangible solution. Could you just do this one thing for me this week? And
then
because we
that's
talked
it.
a little bit,
We're all
yeah,
good.
that's it. Yeah, because we talked a little bit about setting boundaries as carers, but maybe we also need to recognise that we want to offer those boundaries also to the people that we're seeking some input from. Claire Louise, go ahead. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I had this with Ian's family. When Ian first got ill, he was in a coma for a few weeks, and they were at the hospital every day. They were stopping in the special unit that had housing for people, and they were wailing and wailing next to his bed every day and weeping and da da da. He came home. We didn't see them for 9 months, and it was like, you know, it literally was like, what's going on? Ian was ill for 9 years. They only lived about an hour away. You know, I'm not even saying, you know, they were having to travel from a different country. My mum and dad lived in Spain when Ian first got ill, and they came and stayed for 6 months, but I helped by the by. And I think over the 9 years that Ian was ill, they probably visited twice a year if I was lucky. They didn't really phone. I was enraged, a bit like this person. I really, really got my goat at first, and then I just realised, I think a bit like Tamara was saying, I just had to let it go, because all it was doing was making me into maybe a bit of a bitter person, and maybe not a nice person, and feeling resentful. And I think I just came to the conclusion that everybody's different, and everybody deals with illness in a different way, and maybe they were struggling to see their son in that aspect. You know, they were sort of seeing Ian being the big jolly 6 foot Scottish rugby player, and then all of a sudden, you know, he was struggling to, you know, get out of the chair and everything like that. And I think, you know, it's very difficult sometimes to put yourself into other people's shoes. And I didn't do it at first. I was, like I say, enraged. But as time went on, I kind of think I just realised, well, maybe they just can't cope with him being ill. And because they can't cope with it, that's their way of sheltering themselves from it, by maybe distancing themselves from the situation. I don't think they stopped loving him. I don't think they didn't care. I think they just couldn't cope with it, and some people can't.
Thanks for that insight, Claire Louise. That's really interesting.
Just one more thing. Anger it can be quite infectious, can't it? It can sort of be in part of our life, but then infects other bits. So I've stubbed my toe, and all of a sudden I'm blaming the cat or whatever it is. I'm just angry. And sometimes I think when somebody becomes ill, that can enrage us, because life's just so unfair. It's rotten. It's just rotten. So yeah, anger can go from there to there. It's transferable.
I just wanted to just kind of agree with that. I think anger can take you into a different direction. So I think if you approach something with compassion, and maybe try and not put yourself in other people's shoes, but then try and think about how, you know, how other people perceive disabilities or carings or illnesses. You know, they may not be able to deal with it themselves, but I think deal with it with compassion, only because of that anger is going to just fuel and perhaps make you kind of react in a way that you don't normally react. So sometimes families are amazing people, but sometimes they know how to trigger or press the buttons or the wrong buttons. So I think the advice really is try not to. I know it's difficult, and I know people know how to push buttons and things like that, but in this situation you need to be
No, very nice thoughts, personal experiences, but actually, yes, some very realistic thoughts there in terms of how we might manage with those kind of next layers of family and friends. And just before we come to the next question, I want to just share some comments that have been coming through. So, of course, when we're here doing the thing, we don't always see all of the comments that are coming through in the chat, but my colleague Laura has very kindly popped some in, and I love this one. Claire Louise, this is one for you. So you are a knitter. And so we've got a comment has come in, my bit of me time is knitting. I got so carried away with knitting a scarf. It's so long, it's unwearable outside, but it's a grown-up comfort blanket, and it reminds me of time caring for Dad. That's a really nice comment, isn't it? She just
needs to tell somebody she was inspired by Dr. Who.
She's just keeping on knit. Yes, that's right. Tom Baker. And you've got your big long scarf, but yeah, that scarf just kept on going. But actually, also I really love that comment that this scarf now, this extra long scarf has become a bit of a reminder of the opportunity that that person had to care for dad. That's a lovely commenting. Also, people who've commented crocheting, again, something you mentioned, Tamara, during the session, that kind of hand-eye coordination really is a good mindfulness tool. Just takes us out a little bit maybe from the stresses and the other anxieties. A little bit of me time on that. I want to come to another question that's come in. This person has submitted the question, says, finding it hard to balance the need for good support and not being isolated. How can I be more confident in asking for help as I am really starting to struggle? So, Darren, would you mind if we came to you first on that one? Is that something that you think is a difficult thing to actually, first of all, make that step forward? You spoke a lot about being open with people. Is it hard to start that conversation and ask for help?
It certainly is me dealing with medical professionals, because a lot of the time when my mum was unwell, you're dealing with district nurses, you're dealing with social workers, you're dealing with psychologists, psychiatrists, all these kind of things. And you always got the back of your mind, these people are very educated in the space, and I'm not. This is my first kind of bike ride in this field. What do I do? How to speak to people? And again, I think what you need to do is bring things back to base level and explain to them, how you're feeling. You're not using the same sort of language, because they're using medical terms and clinical terms, which obviously means the same sort of thing. What I think we need to do is be exactly that, be open and honest. And what I always say to people, don't, because again, going back to the issue of communication, sometimes when there's a medical issue going on, or something going on about that person's care, the person you're caring for is being done. If you're not happy about it, people kind of think, oh, I can't speak up, because they're the people with the best knowledge. What I would say is, don't be afraid to speak up and ask a question. In my mind, I'm old school. And there's such thing as a silly question. If you want to know something or understand something better, ask it. In terms of getting help, there's some really good charities out there, people like Alzheimer's UK, Dementia UK, Dementia, for example, Dementia Cares Count. Don't have to go to those organisations, even CAB, Citizens Advice, and kind of say, I'm in a situation. I mean, I found with my mum, a lot of the time I would go to an organisation or part of the council and say, I need this kind of help. How can you help me? And they say, it's not us. And I say, well, if it's not you, who is it? And they would say, I don't know. I've been trying to house spin and literally bouncing from pillar to post, spending days trying to find quite basic information. So don't be afraid to go to one of the big organisations, Dementia UK, Age UK, Dementia Cares Count, and say, look, I need some help here. Because we're not experts in this subject. So quite often we're thrown into a situation we never took to find ourselves in, never in a million years. Didn't even think I found myself in that black place. And it can be quite a dark place at times. And I think it helps you keep everything together. If you go to people or an organisation or group or charity that's been there before, there's maybe a question in your mind, you're thinking to yourself, that's just ridiculous. That's almost stupid. You can't possibly ask it. If you go to the charity and ask and kind of say, look, I want to know this, but I find them asking it might look silly. They would have had that question hundreds of times, possibly thousands of times. And they would say, look, is the answer? Or if they can't help you directly, there's people to go to. So it's all about not being afraid to ask for help. That's a big thing, I think, in this kind of space. And that applies in lots of circumstances.
Yeah, no such thing as a silly question, isn't that what they say? Mahinder, could I ask you a little bit on this, because you mentioned a couple of times when we were talking in the session earlier about the carers networks being helpful, and I think you also mentioned how you sharing your experience has enabled other people to sort of reach out and seek support. Do you think carers networks can be a valuable source of not only connecting but also getting assistance?
Yeah, definitely, because you're starting something, it's new, and it's difficult. It becomes all these things I was saying, isolated anger, people that once spoke to you and social circles are dwindling, and so it can become quite overwhelming. But then you join something like a carers network, and there's other people feeling the same thing. I think there was this thing about me thinking from the South Asian community that a lot of people find these kind of things taboo and they don't talk about. But I went onto the Carers Network and I found actually it isn't. It's just everybody across the board finds it difficult to talk about disabilities, illnesses, and carers. So what that does, it introduces you to a group of people that are speaking the same as you, talking the same as you. They may know of other resources that you don't know about. So all of a sudden, your knowledge increases, your confidence increases to have those kind of confident conversations with your peers, your colleagues, and your team leader. So you need those, especially with your relationship with your team leader, is so important. So to have that kind of backing. So what I did is I had a conversation with one of the leads or the chairs of the carers network, and she gave me all this information, and then I went and sat with my team leader and kind of just explained everything, and from that, the back of that, a carer's passport was done, and it just kind of empowered me. So I think, yeah, definitely, you know, it's don't feel small or silly or anything like that. You know, ask this, you know, even if you're just chipping away at it, just ask. It's really important to ask the right kind of questions, because what you just want is the best kind of outcome for the person that you're caring for.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about carers networks is, as well, particularly if you're joining one that's specific to your department, is you're connecting with people who understand your department's policies and understand the types of things that you might be able to ask for, the support that you might be able to gain. Well, we are literally just seconds, I think, away from the end of this session. But before we do finish, I would like to just share with all of you some more comments that have come through. This is a lovely one. As a non-carer, I wanted to thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. I have so much admiration for you. It's so important for people to know. And that's lovely, because we typically expect that the people who join in these sessions are people who are carers and they've been through the similar things. But actually what we're hearing there is folks who at this point in their lives are not carers, but recognizing the incredible work that you're doing. So thank you so much again for that. And thank you for that lovely comment to the person who sent that in. I want to mention also, this is another comment from someone regarding the role of caring. And what they've said is coming to terms with being a carer is hard. You feel like it's what anyone would do. This is what you do for the people that you care about. I think that's an interesting comment as well, and maybe touches back on one of those earlier questions that came up about family who are maybe slightly distancing themselves, backing off a little bit. When you're a carer, your assumption is everybody would, of course, step up and do this. But that's not always the case, and that can make it difficult. But just recognizing actually that role as a carer is such a vital one, such an important one. And I think finally, I want to share a lovely comment which someone has said, thank you for this great session. You are all fantastic carers and wonderful people. And I wholeheartedly will second that. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with Claire Louise, with Mahinder, with Darren, and also with Tamara, and to get your insights, your experience and your expertise, because you are the experts in the caring roles that you've been doing.